everybody. Welcome to Sonic Talk number 378. That's it. It's we're heading for 400 quite soon. Well, 12 weeks. What that's going to be? It's going to be about 3 months' time. So not that soon, but you know, another milestone. The 500 is going to be the big one, though. I think if we ever make it to 1,000, that would be the really big one. But I'm not projecting that far into the future. Certainly not. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. We've got a large and fulsome chat room who I'll just bring in there. There they are. Thank you very much for joining us, as ever. And also, we've got our show sponsors, Isotope. Remember, they are currently pimping their RX4 sound restoration bundle, which is actually the dog's dangles. Actually, it's a very good piece of kit. And there is a competition which we have a winner for from last week who won a full working copy of RX4, and there will be another competition announced part-way through the show when we will also bring information about said RX4 if you've never heard about it. If you've not watched us before and this is your first time, we stream this live every week, Wednesday 4 PM UK time, sonicstate.com/live. And the resulting video is uploaded to our YouTube channel. So if you like the kind of stuff that we do and you dig our banter, then please do subscribe. Well, subscribe anyway, because we do a lot of other stuff that you might be interested in also. Reviews, news, interviews, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, welcome, everybody. I'm going to go to my first guest. Haven't seen Mr. Robbie Bronneman for a while. How are you, Robbie? Robbie, of course, well, at the moment, it would be fair to say you are a film composer, right?
Yeah, I've just finished actually this weekend. We just finished the first bit of it. Yeah, so
wow.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. A lot of fun, an animated film. So totally new territory for us, but it was a lot of fun doing it.
And how many minutes of music have you just passed through your
20
stereo bus? Bloody hell.
20, yeah. And it all, half of it had to be really epic. It was like, you know, dinosaurs and, you know, big vistas and all that. So it was kind of ethnic meets massive orchestral meets dubstep meets everything. So it was kind of a lot of fun.
Sounds like a blast.
Yeah, yeah.
And how were you syncing to picture? What do you use to actually kind of work to picture? Do you just import like movies into your DAW, or how did you do that?
Yeah, we just get a QuickTime sent to us at a sensible size, and I've got 3 monitors here, so we put it up on the 3rd monitor, and then we just crack on. Yeah.
Because you work in Logic, don't you? Because I remember there's in Logic that this was a big deal, wasn't there? There was the ability to bring QuickTime movies into Logic and output over FireWire, for goodness sake, or to separate monitors, so you can do all of that.
Yeah, and then just when we're just sending stuff backwards and forwards, we can just export the movie back again to them, just so they can view it with the sound on, and then we just send out stems at the end. So yeah.
So I guess that's the advantage of Logic being an Apple product, because you get the kind of deep integration with QuickTime, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's actually Logic 64 had quite a few bugs with the movie stuff, which has been great, because this is the first time I've done a movie project in X. So all that stuff's been sorted, and it's so much more elegant now. So yeah,
nice.
Very good. Yeah,
excellent. Sounds like a dream come true. So lots of analog synthesizers, or in the box for recall?
No, it was all in the box. Although we did make a few sounds and put them in as audio. But yeah, we just couldn't. It's just not too unwieldy. I heard of someone the other day who does all his film projects with modular stuff, which I just can't fathom how that's possible.
Wow.
Anyway,
with balls of steel, I'd imagine, and perhaps a really strong management team behind him who says no changes are possible.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, isn't it? Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I've got away with about 3 changes on this 20 minutes, so I think that we were pretty quick.
So you were quite far into the edit, so they didn't change the timings on you.
No, apparently that's the beauty of working with animated movies. Generally, it's taken them like months and months to render that. So the idea that they want to go back and just hack stuff out is pretty unlikely.
Ah, top tip there. So if you want easy life,
go
for CGI.
CGI that's well down the road by the time you get to it, and I think you're pretty safe.
Nice. I like that. I like the sound. That's top tips there. Well, also we're going to Mr. Gaz Williams in his garret in Bristol, who Gaz Williams, of course, you may recognise from Sonic Touch. Also, we've done some stuff on Cubase, which if you saw the tempo mapping, which is brilliant, actually. I've really enjoyed that. And also, he's a bass player and producer too. A man of many strings. How are you, Gaz?
Well, not that many strings.
4.
You should...
5 if you're feeling very proggy.
Oh no, there's no 5 strings in prog. That's no. Anyway, yeah, I was going to say, yeah, great, very good, thank you. Been in a subterranean studio most of the day today, so I'm still sort of just readjusting to daylight.
Yeah, so I've turned all the lights off here. I finally figured out if I switch this light on over here, I don't look quite so dingy and dark compared to the rest of you. So I think that's going to be my lighting setup from now on. I also want to say, Rob Parpen, happy birthday. It's 50 years old today. The synth instrument and, well, he's a synth kind of everything. His collection of synthesizers and his collection of software instruments. Thank you very much for all your good stuff, Rob. Happy birthday. And from...
Happy birthday, Rob. Yeah, happy birthday, Rob.
Happy birthday, Rob.
There we go. So, happy birthday, Rob. But anyway, let's move on. We've got topics and stuff. First one is actually this. This is the Retronyms Wedge, pronounced W-E-J.
Hey, it's JP from Retronyms. If you know us, you know that we've been creating audio
basically, he's been kind of, you know, a bit... They develop lots and lots of apps, and they are basically a bit sick of iPads sliding around and what have you. So they made this thing which has got a power. It will power your iPad and work as a USB hub and a MIDI Wi-Fi hub. But it will need iOS 8, which is a slight downside, but it's grippy as well. And it's interesting that that you can basically, you know, and it's got a light show on the back and an Arduino hackable board, which allows you to get in there and sort of mod it and do all sorts of things. I must admit, I did order one today, a pre-order. I don't know how many they need to get, but you know, they're at 6%. They've got 30 days yet left. I mean, it seems like a good idea. You showed me this yesterday, Gaz, when you were over. Have you had a chance to look into it some more?
I did, and I was initially really excited about it. I thought, that's a very clever idea. And after looking at it a little bit more, it just sort of struck me why on earth they didn't put MIDI DIN plugs on it as well. You know, I thought that maybe just two. It's the fact that it works as like a double USB hub, and I'm assuming that you can't plug a passive hub into it. I think you can only have two devices running off it. But at the same time, though, that's a neat idea in terms of being able to have two USB class compliant MIDI devices, and it not taking up, you know, it not being plugged into the iPad. So either you can actually use one of those USB connectors to power the iPad, which is quite cool, and have another thing connected to it, or you could have your iPad plugged into an audio interface through the Lightning connector and still be able to connect to it. So in that respect, it's quite good. I just think it's a shame there's no...
Didn't go far enough, you think, maybe?
I think so. Now I'm looking at it, there's a lot of space on it, but I mean, maybe it is a cost issue. I don't know, maybe because it is reasonably affordable. But I should mention, I mean, this is only possible. This device really is only possible with iOS 8's kind of MIDI over Bluetooth. There is a third party. Well, there is a third party Apollo MIDI or something that would allow you to do it, I think. But
no.
No, am I wrong about that?
I don't know. Well, I was thinking, well, what about just using RTP MIDI? I mean, if you've got something that will work with RTP MIDI, I mean, you would need something that would convert the MIDI into network MIDI, but the iPad should be, yes, I suppose. I mean, it's something at least. I mean, you could use RTP MIDI to talk to lots of things, but they would need some sort of network connection. So, you know, they could have put a network port on it. They could have put, like you say, MIDI ports. I think the yeah, I think it's there's lots of things they could have done, but perhaps, you know, wouldn't it be great if they could incorporate sort of the iConnect technology into it as well? What the hell? Throw one of those in too. Let's have that as well. Obviously, be a lot more expensive, but
yeah, no, I can understand that. And I mean, at the moment, if you pre-order it, it's $99, which is about £61 or thereabouts. So it's
yeah, I did it. I don't know why. I felt a bit like, yeah, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, I mean, one of the things I thought was quite appealing, I actually like the idea of the lights. I think that's nice, especially, from a live point of view, that those lights would be kind of coming out of the audience. And there's something in the Arduino set there which means that it will respond to the music somehow. So I don't know if there's does it respond to the MIDI? Does it
MIDI and audio apparently, but
right.
So far that's not clear. Question from sorry, I just went past. Dear DLS Synth says wireless internet latency, wireless Ethernet latency. I haven't noticed any with that, to be honest, but I mostly use it for control rather than for triggering like drum sounds or whatever. So yeah, perhaps I wouldn't use it for absolutely rhythmically critical triggering, but I know. Robbie,
yeah,
what do you put your iPad on when you're using it, if you're still using it?
Well, I have it on a I've got like a custom acrylic stand made here, which has got a neoprene cushion on it that I've custom made.
Of course.
So it's all very.
I feel a rival product coming on.
I don't you can see that on the desk here. Nice dust cover over my stuff there. Yeah, I've just got it here, and it's on like this custom cover that's a part of my kind of array of stuff.
With lights on.
Yeah, of course, lights. You've got to have lights. Lights with everything.
You must be the Southwest's biggest consumer of coloured LEDs.
Yeah. So it has to be ergonomic, doesn't it? If you're going to use an iPad in the studio, it has to be right there, and it has to be usable in front of you. So I quite like, where they're coming from with the device. But I don't know if I don't know whether it's something I really need, because I'm all set up with the eye connectivity thing, and it kind of does everything I need. I don't really want to use, as I've said before, the iPad as a be-all and end-all music-making device on its own.
No.
I just want it to be kind of an extra tool along with other things. So
are you using the iPad? Have you got the 4 Plus now, or are you still on the 2 for...
No, it's since I've got back off the tour, that's on my list of things to sort out. Yeah, I want to get 2 4 Pluses to get everything linked up properly in the studio. Yeah,
I have to say the 4 Plus is incredibly useful. Just you can throw it into anything, and kind of it's just as a MIDI patch bay or whatever, and it just becomes accessible all over the place. It's a very utilitarian. I mean, it did get another gold award on Sonic Touch, or at least it maintained its gold status. It didn't get specifically gold, but yeah, it's a good piece of kit. So yes, I suppose replacing that is a bit tricky. So Robbie, what are you using your iPad for in the studio environment? Integrating, bearing in mind that you have got the audio pass through.
I use it primarily for. There's a few granular sampling things I use on it. And I use a couple of the synths on it, the Waldorf one,
okay.
The Nave one, and a couple of others.
And how do you find the stability of the aggregating audio?
Again, sometimes it can be a bit flaky, but as I say, it's been all right. I've got it aggregated with my Apogee Symphony, and then if I know that I'm not going to use it for a project, like I didn't want to use it for the film thing, I just switch back to the dedicated, non-aggregated driver situation. So
okay.
I don't leave it active all the time, because I must admit I have found it a little bit temperamental.
Right.
Yeah. I do something on the iPad, and then I just put it into Logic, and then I commit it, and that's it. I'm done.
Yeah.
So I don't ever want to. So I don't keep it permanently active in the system all the time to like that way. So. Yeah.
No, fair enough. I can understand why you wouldn't want to do that. And also, committee. Imagine you have a bank of them live, just aggregating them all together via your 2 MIDI 4 Pluses. That would be pretty awesome.
No, but having said that, shock horror, I am starting to have this wave of coming over me of wanting to rationalise the studio back down a bit. So,
what do you mean back down? Back down to?
Just down to a few things that I really know I love and use a lot.
Analog mixing desk and a microphone.
Oh no. I mean like the ultimate Mac Pro 12 core, and my monitors and all that, and just very little, just a few analog things, not quite so much sprawling stuff that I've got at the moment. And just really concentrate on using a few things really well, as opposed to everything a bit vaguely. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can understand that. I'm starting to kind of, I feel there's something, you know, every time I use the modular and I start to kind of get, you know, I'm always using the IntelliGel. I think it's a fantastic synthesizer. I'm starting to fall in love with the Boomstar as a fantastic synthesizer. I feel there's a couple more bits missing, but I'm thinking I'd quite like to kind of do a regular synth jam slot that whatever is in, I'll just incorporate into that and just put those up and just do some real time stuff. But I'm just sort of trying to get the nerve together to be able to loop things and what have you. So anyway, yeah, I understand your idea for rationalization. Gaz, I saw your ears prick up at that.
Well, it is a bit of a funny thing, isn't it? Like, you know, back in the 1990s, I was scraping around for as much bits of kit as I could possibly find, and had relatively very little kit that could, you know, and dream about this and dream about getting that, and if only this did that, and if only that, you know, could do. And now I've got so much kit and so much stuff, and it's like this is a topic we do come back to quite regularly on Sonic Talk, but this idea of just too much choice, being overwhelmed with possibilities, and I mean, you know, and I often, if this topic comes up, I talk about my, like, something like my OP1 or something, and just going and working just entirely in that. I mean, would you ditch your OP1, Robbie?
No, that's one of the things I would always hold on to.
That's interesting.
My love affair with that thing just carries on and on and on.
Me too. Me too.
I don't use it. I don't quite use it like you do, I think, with regards to wanting to like use the tape machine and do whole tracks in it. But as a source of inspiration, even when I just plug it up through some pedals and stuff and use the synth, I just love it. It's yeah. It's the ultimate form leading on to creativity for me. It really is. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, I recently got the little strap. You can get these little strap adapters, so you can fit it onto a
Changed
strap.
my life.
And
Strap
it
on.
has.
There's the show title there. The Strap On Changed My Life. Excellent.
And they're X-rated videos of you now on the internet, are they? Prancing around your house with it.
Well, thing is, it goes across here. I mean, if I could go get it, it goes across here, and I've realised I play it like it seems a bit ungainly. One hand up this way, one hand this way. I play it like a Quasimodo style, but it's amazing. And I've been doing some performances with it at some festivals, you know, performing it. It's a strange thing.
Are you wearing a cape at the same time, like you talked about?
Oh no, the cape is coming later. That's
the cape.
yes,
the cape might actually shroud the OP1. It'd have to be a small cape, more like perhaps what are those things that Victorian gentlemen used to wear, like a smaller cape that went over an over cape.
Okay, yeah, I know what you're getting at. Yeah.
Anyway, this has gone far too far. Needless to say, some people will find the wedge useful. I mean, I like the idea of it being a kind of utilitarian thing that you just kind of go, yeah, because I mean, your only other choices are, you know, either stands, which, you know, can be a generally non-utilitarian, or something like the Focusrite iTrack, or, you know, the Alesis IO dock, those kind of things which have those additional elements to them, and, you know, they're not always the perfect match, but this seems like quite a neat idea. The fact that you could just stand it on something, USB it, and charge it at the same time, yes please. That's I mean, for 60 quid, that's a bargain. I think, you know, even just, and a light show, what the hell, and a hackable Arduino board. I like the idea of that. So that means you could probably figure out all sorts of other stuff. You could probably actually hack an Ethernet shield onto it, and then, you know, have RTP MIDI as well if you wanted. So what the hell, that's you know, that's obviously not written in concrete. You may not be able to as well, but we'll see. But nice idea. Right, so what's next? Let's see. Oh, yes, firmware hacks for BCF. And I don't know if anybody's got one of these, but I just like the idea of this, the repurposing. This is at Zac Audio, Zaquencer, which is a firmware update to the BCR2000, which is the Behringer kind of multi-knob box. And they've created a 32-step sequencer, 16 tracks, multiple patterns, and what I really like the idea of this. I don't suppose people are going to rush out and buy a BCR2000 just for this purpose, although they might do, because step sequencers are very much in vogue. It has got a couple of MIDI output ports as well, so you do get quite a lot of MIDI connectivity. but just that someone's taken the time and effort to do this. I just really dig it. It's ingeniously done. I won't play the whole thing because it's actually quite long, but and involved. But great idea. Can you think, Robbie? I don't know whether you've got your rack over there. Have you got any step sequences in there? You were going to get an IntelliGel, weren't you? The Metropolis.
Yeah, I've got that. I love it. Yeah, I do love that. I had the Make Noise one before that, Rene.
Right.
It was just too cerebral for me. I wanted something that was a little bit more kind of. It was just all touch buttons and I just didn't get on with it. I wanted something that's a little bit more traditional, you know. And the Metropolis is great because it's got all the slide stuff on it as well.
And it'll sequence control voltage, which I guess is a major advantage. I mean, obviously the BCR won't do that.
But what amazes me about those devices is they've been around for so long, and
I've got one in the cupboard over there.
And so many people use them for things, you know, and they're still popular now. I mean, one of my favourite artists, Tim Exile, he's got a whole bank of them, and he's a whole live rigs based around them, and he does amazing stuff with them. They're kind of one of those products. I know a lot of people who bought them and been through quite a few of them because they've tended to break down, but it is a good product.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's interesting you should say that because there are a whole new range of Behringer controllers coming out, which look very interesting as well. But neat. I mean, just brilliant notion of recycling hardware and writing firmware for it. I mean, presumably Behringer, I don't know the history, but they must have opened it up to allow people in there to do that stuff because you'd have to reverse engineer it, presumably.
Quite a lot of stuff has come out, though, reverse engineered, so I'm not sure. I did have the BCR2000, the fader bank, but sadly, it blew up. It's the only piece of equipment. I was working and I just heard, and I had the distinct smell of capacitors that are blown out. Sort of, I was gutted actually because I used to use that thing a lot. But
smell of burning Behringer. Yeah, another possible show title there, but perhaps not quite so good as Strap On. But it's a great idea. I mean, I think it's like 70. It's $70, isn't it, to kind of download? I think it's going to be ready sort of finally from about mid-October, so round about now, I guess. Can you think of any other things that have had kind of firmware makeover, or someone's just completely hacked it to do something it was not meant to do? Because it's
my friend's got a Juno. Which one is it? The 6 or 106? I'm not sure.
Kiwi 106.
The Keeley 106
mod. The Kiwi, right? Yeah.
Kiwi 106.
Yeah, Kiwi 106.
Right, yeah, and that's made it MIDI, extra LFO, all sorts of extra bonuses.
Well, that involves quite a lot. It's not just the firmware though; it actually involves a new board and more operating ASIC RAM.
What's the MPC? There's a famous MPC firmware hack, isn't there? That's JJOS or something.
All right. Yes, I think you're right there.
And that really increases the functionality of the. I'm not sure which. I know my friend's got the MPC 500. Is it the small one? And he had the mod done on it. So yeah.
Robbie's heading off to the back of the room. There could be some.
I've got the ultimate repurposing here. So there's the Otto Biscuit, which is a great device with bit crunching and filtering and all sorts of stuff on it. But they changed the firmware so you can reboot it, and when you reboot it, it turns it into a full synth with step sequencer and everything on it.
Oh, neat.
And that was just came like three years after this device came out. They just said, oh, by the way, we've made a synth for it now. So now it turns it into a synth. So that was like, to me, one of the best repurposing just from firmware.
Oh, it's cool.
Ever. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess in the chat room, Redwalks 13 in the chat room says, but that was done by by Otto Machines themselves. So I suppose it doesn't strictly count as a third party hack, but still, neat.
But nobody bought, when they bought the device, they never thought it was going to end up being a synth. It was like it's kind of like a nice added extra.
Excellent. I really like the idea of repurposing, kind of, because you do get cool hardware. And like you say, the BCF and the BCR I lent the BCF to somebody. I've still got to get it back, but I don't think I ever used it in the end because it was sort of it was when Logic Control was happening. It had a Logic Control mode, but it was a bit obscure. And because you've only got a 3-character display or maybe 2-character display on it, so the parameter names were a little bit cryptic, shall we say.
It was a bit grindy for me. It was a bit too noisy, the automation, you know, it was like a little bit, my BCF. I think that was the worst thing about it. But coming back to the BCR though, with this mod, are you able just to toggle it then between its, you know,
I was trying to find that because that would be brilliant. That would be, you know, obviously but I don't know how you could do that because presumably you need to flash the ROM in it somehow. So I doubt if Behringer were so generous as to put enough memory and storage in there to have 2 versions of an operating system. So right. I don't know, but I would guess not.
No, that's a shame because it'd be nice if you could get your sequence on the go and then just toggle it back and then use the knobs to sort of mutate the sequence.
Now you're talking. I think you probably need just 2 BCFs. That would be, or BCRs. That would be the way to do it. And then, or have a BCF for controlling and a BCR for the other thing. But yeah, I don't know. I think you probably need some extra ROM. There would, in fact, actually, if I remember correctly, there was the Jazz Mutant Lemur allowed you to do that. You could boot. You could get a mod which would boot between the Jazz Mutant, just the Lemur ROM, and the Dexter ROM, because the hardware was exactly the same, and if I remember correctly. But sadly, Jazz Mutant, in terms of hardware, are no longer producing stuff, but they do the... well, is it Line took over the stuff that they...
Line!
Or Lean, whichever way you might pronounce it. But yes... fun stuff. Right, there must be... Actually, this is probably a good time to introduce our sponsors. Obviously, iZotope are with us this week, as with every week. And as you know, if you're a regular follower of the show, they are giving away stuff. The iZotope Fairy weekly bestows a gift upon a random competition entrant. Anyway, here's some advertising. So, don't forget, we're talking about RX4. RX4 is probably the most, well, it is definitely the most kind of highly regarded audio restoration system. It really is amazing. Basically, RX4 has just come out and it adds a whole bunch of new features to the restoration suite. We've got clip gain. You can easily adjust the balance and volume of vocals and instruments with new non-destructive editing feature. Dialogue denoiser is now available as standard, so you can run this as real-time plugins with low DSP footprint, and it's a very effective way of denoising multiple tracks. RX Connect, which is also really cool, works with Pro Tools specifically and other DAWs that don't allow you to have an audio editor, so you can just fire audio in and out in between them without having to flip between programs. It's all handled with RX Connect. There's Leveler, which automatically balances the volume of your mix, EQ Match, and also Ambience Match, which is very cool, which allows you to take an ambient and match it across. This is we're seeing the clip gain there. Lots and lots of extra features, and if you're doing anything with audio restoration or audio production, post-production, any of that stuff, then it's well worth checking out. And of course, as ever, it's a 10-day free, fully functional demo, RX4, iZotope.com/RX4. Go check it out. And by the way, you know, they're also running a competition, and last week's winner, if I bring up the page, will win a copy of RX4. They had to tweet out... Well, I'll announce the competition first. Actually, that's probably easier. So, oh, no, that's not the one. It's that one. That's the one I want. You can win RX4 for yourself. All you got to do... You do need Twitter for this, but it's a very painless sign-up. It's not an unpleasant process. So what you would do is you need to tweet the hashtag #HumRemoval, and you need to mention @SonicNick and @iZotope Inc. That means I'll be able to track all the entrants of the competition. We then add them all up, pick a random number and count from the first entrance to the last entrance, and there we have a winner. That's how we do it. So remember, tweet the hashtag #HumRemoval, @SonicNick and @iZotope Inc. to enter and win your copy of RX4, and that could be yours. And next week we'll announce a winner, and that'll be it. It's very, very straightforward. So last week's winner, let me see who that is here. A chap called Dylan Birch, and he tweeted and was picked by the supercomputer, which was controlled by my mouse, and his handle is @Dylan Birch All one word, Dylan. So if you're watching, Dylan, get in touch and we will pass on your details to the Isotope Fairy, who will email you the subsequent links and what have you, so you'll be able to enjoy a full copy of Isotope RX4. Okay, right. Next up. Sorry, Gaz, please do go.
Rich Hilton is wanting to join, I
Oh,
believe.
is he? Rich is in the country. Ah, okay. Let me just go and see what I think he was. Oh yeah, I got him. Let me just go and grab him. 1 second. This is how you know the show is live, folks.
Hey, put it on me, Nick. Oh well. Doo-doo. Yes.
There he is.
Hey, Rich. You are there.
Yes.
Can you hear me, Rich?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can. This is all working out. And look, you're on the. I even got a lower third for you. I thought you might just wake because you've been travelling, right? Rich Hilton, of course, is on the road with Chic as we speak. Oh, that's almost a rhyme.
Hold on. There we go. Okay.
So yeah,
Sorry.
Rich is ensconced somewhere in a hotel near a venue where he will be playing tomorrow night with Chic. Is that right?
Yes, that's true.
Excellent.
I'm in what I believe is Greenwich, near London, and we're playing at the O2 tomorrow.
Nice.
Ah.
In the club Indigo 2.
So you've just arrived, right? So
No, arrived this morning at about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. I've just awakened.
Well, Rich, what can I say? Thank you very much for joining us. And is it a public gig? Will people in the area be able to attend, buy
It's
tickets?
a public gig, but apparently it's sold out.
I wouldn't expect anything less.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. Very excited about it. We love playing there, and it's a nice sort of intimate venue for us these days, and it's cool. I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent.
The O2, intimate.
No, the Indigo.
Indigo. It's a great venue.
Oh, it's the Indigo.
Ah, there we go. So, all right, well, brilliant. Well, nice for you to join us, Rich. You missed a couple of topics, but we're happy to have you aboard.
I'm fully unprepared, by the way, so I'll riff the best I can. But
that's
I really
all right.
don't.
Well, one of the things that is coming up next, which I'm quite interested in, actually, is that the notion of this sort of 4D sound system. This came out on the Ableton site. Now, if I press this button, yes, here we go. I better turn the audio up. We can hear it. This is we've seen these things before, but this is a very interesting four-dimensional sound environment with pillars and a grid of pillars where sound can be raised up and down as well as round and left and right and in all directions. And excuse me,
what does it mean when someone
4D Sound is the company. I think they're based in Holland. And this is a video of founder Paul Uman talking about the system, plus musician Stimming.
Understand what it's like. I went to the guys and heard the system, and
but if you see here, it's kind of this notion of a grid, but it allows this sort of space to be created with what looks like a pretty incredible surrounding sort of sound type thing. There's some of the things that they can do are amazing. It sounds quite ambient what you're hearing there. They've actually released his performance on they recorded it in ambisonics, so it's actually, and you can get a sense of the movement. You can't, I'm presuming, getting it exactly the way that it was at the venue, but we seem to periodically see these kind of updates and notions and ideas of sound systems that will change things. But this seems like a really interesting performance notion, and what they're using is Max for Live and iPads and all things to sort of move things around, as well as creating these sort of ambiances and blockages so that you can have sound, but like a virtual wall, the sound goes the other side of it, and the system kind of makes it feel like you're out. It's just lots of really interesting stuff. Robbie, you do live electronic music, traveling around a lot, lots of festivals, lots of kind of that side of things. Have you seen this kind of thing in operation? I mean, it looks like it could be kind of expensive, I'd imagine.
The thing I've been to, I've seen a few gigs in surround the things, and the thing about it is that it's so dependent on the venue, and it's great it's great that people are doing stuff like this. It's almost like it's almost crosses the lines, doesn't it, between a gig and music and an art installation, in some sort of installation, because it's very dependent on a very controlled environment like that being set up properly. So the logistics of taking someone like that on the road, I can imagine it's the sort of thing that somebody like Amin Tobin might go, right, for my next show, I'm gonna do all my mapping stuff and I'm gonna do this, and it's gonna be only at certain venues, you know, that type of thing. I can see how that works, but the idea of somebody touring something like that, I don't see how it could really work.
Do you think perhaps that part of the issue also has been with these, why some of these things don't get as much momentum as you would think, is the ability, the way that they are controlled and imagined and what have you, is sort of not all that interesting. It's just almost like the way that they, you know, that they mix stuff in the movies, which is 5/1, which is usually, you know, there's a formula and you have the ambience in the background and the vocals in the middle, and you know, you move it around a bit, but is there room for in the soundscape to do this kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because Howard's just got a new project which actually just launched on Pledge Music today. Get that little plug in.
Yeah.
But I'm just about to do the 5/1 mixes for that project, and it's the first 5/1 project I've get to do that isn't basically somebody's live gig that I've mixed in 5/1. So for those sort of things, I always want to make it be like you're at the gig, and you don't want stupid 5/1 things flying around. It's gimmicky because that's not what happened. But this project we're doing now is very much a studio album, which we want to do in 5/1. So I'm going to get to go crazy with it. So I'm looking forward to you know, getting my teeth stuck into that. But it's interesting, the whole surround thing, because me as a musician and as a producer, I love the idea of it, and I'm very excited by the idea of it. But I meet very few other people who are very excited by the idea of it. And most general people I know who just happen to be, you know, casual music lovers, it means absolutely nothing to them. So who would you get to go to gigs like this? Effectively, you're only going to get a very small demographic of people who are really kind of get a kick out of this whole, you know, hearing music in such an expanded way. But I mean, I love it. I'm all for it, but I don't know many other people I could get excited about it. That's the thing.
No, that's interesting. I don't know, Rich, whether because you presumably have done 5/1 mixes. I mean, do you think? I mean, this sort of immersive level of sound, because you went to see Amon Tobin, I think, didn't you? You remember, because we talked about him. That's the sort of thing that would really kind of enhance a live show like that. But the size of the audience is going to be quite limited with a system like 4D sound, unless you can glue 5 or 6 of them together.
Well, in Las Vegas, they have certain physical installations where the room and the sound system are all built together to support a particular kind of presentation. So that would be an example of a place in a scenario where you could see this sort of working in terms of a public presentation. Honestly, because I didn't do the research, I don't know enough about what they're doing specifically to comment on it, except to say that I admire the spirit of adventure that comes behind something like this.
It was quite interesting because when you watch the whole thing, there's also a lot of stuff behind it, and you can see what they're developing are the tools to work in a 3-dimensional space, which I'm guessing, you know, you sort of have to a certain degree with 5/1 mixing. But it seems to me that maybe there's, I don't know whether there are enough of those to make 5/1 mixing anything other than that kind of creative, you know, template that you tend to get with 5/1 albums that are, you know, where, because we don't want to hear the lead vocal kind of behind us on the left-hand side. You know, it's a matter of focus, isn't it? Certainly for sort of Route 1 pop music. Perhaps for things that are more experimental and interesting, you could do stuff. But do you think there's a lack of control software for creating inventive ways to use surround sound, or not?
I honestly don't know, because I haven't mixed a lot for surround.
Okay.
But I can tell you, for example, this. Bob Clearmountain apparently has his board configured in such a way that everything he mixes is also available as a surround mix. There's some sort of advanced mystical busing scheme he's come up with for folding out a basically stereo mix into a 5.1. So there are people who are working on this who know a lot more about it than I do.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Gaz?
Well, Cubase has got fantastic surround sound mixing capabilities in terms of it being, you know, the panners, the surround panners, and I think, you know, I haven't really done much in surround, so I'm not very experienced in it, but I'm aware that the mixing tools are really good, and a lot of there's a convolution reverb, and most of the convolution impulses are available with surround versions as well. So I think that as an environment, Cubase certainly would make that surround sound accessible, you know. But and I am interested in surround sound because I have been listening to albums in surround sound recently. Some of the Steve Wilson. Well, I mean, Steve Wilson from the Porcupine Tree is becoming like the absolute go-to guy now. He's been going back to lots of the old classic prog albums. He's done King Crimson recently, and he's working through the Yes catalog at the moment, going back to the original multi-tracks of those albums and rendering, you know, new surround sound mixes. And he's doing a nice job with them, I think. You know, they are quite subtle, I think.
Gaz, have you heard the new Gentle Giant release that he's done?
No, you are kidding.
He's done The Power and the Glory.
No way!
This means nothing
wow!
to me. But
that's a masterpiece.
But do you not think that, you know, if surround was going to really take off to the consumer end, you know, because it did get a fairly big push, it would have done so. Do you think there's actually, we don't want the added complication in terms of listening to certainly music that has form and structure that we're all used to, you know, rock and roll or pop or any of those things? Do you think we're just not, as a species, not ready perhaps for that level of complexity?
My take on it is this, and this is its lowest common denominator. Most people who've got a partner, they don't want speakers in the lounge, like 5 speakers. So the surround speakers end up behind the sofa. The center speaker ends up disappearing behind a bookcase, and nobody's ever got a 5.1 system properly set up. Hardly anyone has, anyway, unless they live on their own.
Exactly.
That's what I think.
So single men.
Yeah, I mean, recently my hi-fi amplifier went kaput, so I was looking at getting it fixed, but I realized I could go out and buy a Sony surround sound system, a big amplifier, surround sound system, big subwoofer, all the stands, all the cables, everything for 60 quid. It was 1,200. It was 1,200 quid. It was a 1,200 quid system. Wow. And I was wondering about this. I was thinking, well, you know, like 12 years ago, 14 years ago, maybe surround sound was going to be the real big thing. And, you know, once the DTS standard had become kind of, you know, the standard, I guess, you know, and then I thought, well, lots of people must have rushed out and got them. And then probably I was thinking, if people move house, probably that's when they think, when they go to set up their living room, they probably think surround sound.
Can't be bothered to take the floor up. Yeah.
Can't be bothered. Just.
Yeah, I'll stick with what I'll get is I'll just have one of those kind of 3D buttons on my iPod dock. Yeah, that'll do it. Yeah, exactly. I know. I mean, you're absolutely right, and because it's complex to set up, it is, because you've got multiple point source, and isn't it, for it to be impressive, you know, to everybody, it has to be set up right. Because I'm sure if you go to, there's actually 2 units down from here, there's a hi-fi place called Paul Green Hi-Fi, who. You know, they must sell countless 5.1 systems and have a demo room. And I imagine, you know, they are constantly, you know, when they go in to get trade-ins, they must get lots of trade-ins and stuff. So I'm guessing perhaps...
I have to confess, so yesterday I watched Rush 30, R30. Rush is 10 years old now, Rush. The Canadian trio, who I'm sure there must be at least 1 or 2 fans somewhere in the chat room. I watched a concert of theirs and that was in surround sound, and I cranked it up quite a bit just to have a listen to it. And you know, it is an amazing experience when you know, watching it at home, watching it and having that audience, you know, feeling like the audience behind you, and just sort of you know,
I suppose, I mean, we were talking about that notion of live events in cinemas and what have you. That's when it makes sense, where you can feel like you can hear rows of people behind you that are actually in the venue rather than where you are watching it. I can see where, you know, you might want those psychoacoustics to enhance the experience, and maybe, you know, watching Glastonbury broadcast live or what, all those kind of things. That's kind of, I can see where that would work. I mean, this is much more, the 4D sound stuff is much more geared towards the notion of experimental stuff, where you can raise things up and down and move, and that sounds really good, but the system must be fantastically expensive because it has to be put together out of stage blocks and then multiple speakers, and it does seem kind of really fascinating and fun to play with. The one thing that guy Stimming says is, you know, I really enjoyed doing this. I'd like to do more so I can learn how to play the system. But again, you know, this guy's got to actually perform in real time, and then also think about mixing in 3 dimensions in real time too. I wonder which one's going to suffer the most, you know, when you put that together, unless you've got another guy involved in the mixing, because in his situation, he's doing it all himself. So, you know, maybe you won't get.
I mean, it is, isn't it? It's like an installation thing.
Yeah.
It's like something you set up for a purpose. I mean, like Rick said, I remember going to see Love in Vegas, and everyone had like speakers in their headset, in the chairs and everything, and it was an amazing sonic experience. But I mean, that's like a purpose-built theatre where it's all there and it's never going to change, and it's all specifically for that one thing. And yeah, it's just the practicalities, like you say, of how you could scale it up and where it would actually be applicable. But I mean, it sounds exciting.
Yeah, well worth watching the video. There's 2 actually to the. Let me see if I can find it. I think I've got it here on the web. Yeah, this 4D sound, new dimension. So this is the space that you can see there, which has these kind of posts. I think there's 16 of them, and subwoofers in the floor. And then 1, 2, 3 speakers high, I think, or 3 or 4 speakers high. And then there's another video for the down where they're talking about what they use to control, and they're using Max for Live and Ableton Live, where the actual movement is sort of integrated with the clip launching and what have you. It's really interesting, actually. And then you can get hold of the full 4D set, which is actually quite nice to listen to. It's an interesting way of listening. It's quite ambient. But you can hear that there's quite a lot of movement, although it's, like I say, it's not quite the same as being there, I'd imagine. But jolly well worth it, so do check it out. Okay then, right. Here's something else. I haven't got a video for this, but these are the kind of 2 aspects of the latest kind of notion of how to release an album. You know, obviously we've got 2 super heavyweights in the world. You know, we've got the U2 album, which in this independent story was the biggest PR disaster. Where what they do, if I actually switch that on, you'll be able to see it. This is on the independent site. They basically gave away, or they got access to all 500 million YouTube iTunes subscribers, and they all got a free copy of the album, which, you know, on the face of it sounds like quite a good idea, and I believe Apple paid them reportedly like $100 million. So, ka-ching, job done. 1 album sale, everybody gets to listen to it whether they like it or not, and that's kind of one approach. And then, of course, the other approach was the Thom Yorke Radiohead, where they've created this kind of BitTorrent, paywalled BitTorrent, which I downloaded. This is the album. Oops, this is the album. If I go back there, it's called Tomorrow's Modern Boxes. And when I first posted it, it was about 100,000, and now it's at 2.1 million. $6 a download. It was quite an easy process. I downloaded it. It's a great album, really electronic, and but nice quality. Sort of sounds like a lot of analog electronics going on there. 2 very different approaches. Guys, how did you feel about receiving a free U2 album?
Wow, I mean, talk about a PR misfire. I think it's been a terrible idea in retrospect. I mean, I thought it was, you know, okay, but I was worried that it was going to backfire, and I didn't anticipate just quite the extent of vitriol which has been coming out as a result of it. But you know, I thought, okay, the whole presentation was incredibly cringeworthy, and I think both Apple and U2 have severely damaged their kind of. I think it was a silly move, really.
I don't see how. I mean, you know, the way that they looked at it is because obviously their tour, you know, they do the in the round, their last tour grossed something like 760 million worldwide. You know, the PR, the albums now for U2 at least seem to be a vehicle for getting people to come to the show because that's where they're making the money. I mean, obviously, 100 million quid's fairly handy, but
it's just the way they did it, though. You know, I think, you know, and like Tim Cook with his kind of creepy voice going, "Wasn't that just the greatest single you've ever heard?" And I was thinking, no. You know, it's just things like that just made me just go, ugh. But, you know, I've had a little listen to some of the album, and it's, you know, it's okay. It's U2, I guess.
Yeah, I must admit, it sounded all right. I just, but, maybe they've kind of not done it in the other way. I don't know. Did this get a lot of press in the States, Rich? I mean, you know, that Apple always does, and that's the whole point of it, I suppose.
Well, it's not like I follow the U.S. press as apart from the online press.
Sure,
which
yeah.
is an international thing anyway. But, yeah, there's been a lot of anger directed towards them all. But do I think this is actually going to have any sort of significant or lasting impression on either Apple or U2? Absolutely not. Not only that, next year they will be filling football stadiums all over the world when they tour. Nobody's going to care about any of this, and the album's actually good.
That's true.
Yeah, it does sound good, actually. I do like the sound of the album.
When I first heard it, I was funny because I thought, oh, this sounds like a totally different guitar sound. It almost sounds like Jack White. And then someone said, oh, Jack White produced it.
Did he
So
really?
yeah, Jack White, yeah. So
I did not know that. That is really interesting. No wonder it sounds so good.
yeah, but
Jack
I mean,
White produced this?
yeah.
Wow.
I think there were two producers. I don't know if he did at least half of it, I think.
Wow.
And then there's somebody else who did the rest, yeah. But yeah, so it's got a different vibe, hasn't it? But I mean, it was yeah. I mean, I know what you're saying, Gaz, about the presentation part of it. But like Rich says, it won't make a blind bit of difference. They'll still just annihilate the world of touring next year.
Yeah, that's true.
And like they got paid all that money. It's probably more money that they got paid there than they would have made from selling it.
Yeah.
No, oh God, definitely, definitely.
Thing,
yeah.
Yeah.
But they were saying, though, it's the biggest release in history because, you know, 500 million people have got this, you know, and all things like that was just like, come on, you know.
What's interesting, Bono was saying that they're working closely with Apple to develop this new music delivery system that's going to revitalize people's interest in buying music again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't doubt that you know, there's a bigger plan, and you know that, and I hope, you know, obviously, you know, people think, oh, he's so far removed from reality, he's such a megastar, and you know, but I'm sure they're doing it for some good reasons, and obviously they have business managers that are trying to maximise the amount of cash they can get out of every single thing that they do. I mean, you know, yeah, I don't suppose there's anything all that wrong with that notion. I mean, it's kind of what you do if you're trying to make a living, I guess.
Interesting.
Sorry. Yeah. Go.
I think they're doing what they need to do to have fun.
Yeah.
These guys don't have the money.
No, I'm sure they don't.
Of course they don't.
They're not doing it because they're trying to make more money. The reason why it's getting hyped the way it is because Apple is trying to sell product. But and who, you know, let he who has never tried to sell something and hyped it cast the first stone.
Absolutely.
But it's the hubbub is just more good publicity for them.
Yeah.
And by the way, they keep coming to our shows.
Excellent.
And telling us things like we're going to be seeing a lot of them next year. So I don't know what that means.
Right. Maybe I don't know. Maybe a whole bunch of cash, Rich. I can only hope. I do hope so.
I don't know about that, but like I said, they've come to at least 5 or 6 of our shows in the last year and a half.
Are you talking U2 or Apple or both? Oh, right.
Yeah, of U2.
Oh, cool. Nice one.
Coming back to the Thom Yorke one of the things I thought was quite interesting was the fact that you can see how much it's costing and you can see how many people have downloaded it. So it's quite a transparent process. So, you know, I mean,
and very successful, I think. They said an experiment. I think 6 million, you know, well, no, more, whatever it is.
$12 million, I guess.
$12 million in 2 weeks.
$12 million to make 8 tracks of electronica. I think that's a bargain, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Could have got a makeup artist for the video, though, I thought.
So, I mean, that's quite amazing. When they did the In Rainbows album, and then it was as a pay what you want, they never ever declared how much money that they made from that. And I thought that was bad sporting, really. You know, so at least this way you kind of go, okay, this is you know, an incredibly valid way of distributing music in terms of direct sales. You know, so if it's trying to prove a point, the point is, it's, well, I mean, obviously Thom Yorke is in one of the, you know, biggest rock bands
exactly, biggest bands
in the world, but in terms of showcasing a new distribution method that is not part of the Apple iTunes thing,
no,
that's
absolutely.
not part of,
it cuts out the 30% thing. I mean, one thing that actually Echosonic said in the chat room, maybe Apple would be best off to, maybe they should, one thing that would be really good, how about supporting what did he say, Echosonic? How about a free album of the listener's choice, and then Apple just distribute that to the artist? That would be really cool, because then, you know, maybe 300 million of those people would be U2 anyway.
But Apple's doing this to satisfy their own motives, which is to promote their products. Well, they're not doing it to some altruistic wish to show everybody that, you know, all music is good or any of that. It's not. This is pretty clear to understand. This is marketing.
It is, yeah. Well, no, hang on a minute, Rich, because, I mean, let's face it, that this was all to go with the launch of the iPhone 6, right? Which it's not like they need any extra publicity for that, surely. I mean, it's already kind of, you know, everybody in the world knows it's coming.
So then we begrudge their right to market it effectively with U2?
No, I wasn't saying that at all. I was just saying as an alternative, you know, in terms of PR and how they were perceived, there may have been another way that would have, you know, come off equally as well, but seen to be more benevolent. That's all, an alternative view, I suppose.
And then of course, you've got to take into account that all of U2's back catalogue started selling really well on iTunes as well.
Well, according to this article, it only sold about 6,000 or 7,000 extra copies, actually,
I read a very rose-tinted review about that then.
I think I can't. Yeah, I did highlight this, but I can't see what happened to the highlighted text.
I read somewhere that it really massively boosted the sales of their back.
I mean, you know, let's face it, who wouldn't? You know, that if you've ever been in a band where there's people sniffing around who either, you know, certainly when I was remixing, you know, and producing albums and what have you, the notion that one of our tracks would be licensed for one of the now that's what I call music collections was like, yeah, that's what you want, because you know you're going to get a big chunk of license fee, and you think, great, you know, it means we're going to get paid, you know, that. So there's no reason why any of this is sort of bad in any way. I mean, I think it's just the fact that they're two of the massive mega brands perhaps could have been seen doing it in a slightly different way, I suppose. I mean, you know, I don't have a problem with...
Going back to the late 60s and the early 70s, record companies used to put together compilation albums of their artists' work, where there would be like 10 or 12 tracks on the album, and each track would represent a different artist in their roster.
Right.
I mean, this kind of, I mean, on some level, this kind of marketing has gone on as long as there's been a music business to support, a record business, that is.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, in the same way that there would be those tours that would be all the acts on a, you know, so you just, and it's what X Factor does. It's just a bit untasteful when you feel you're being sort of
and how much is this? Because it's U2 basically, because there is, let's face it, so many people like to knock U2 for whatever reason they've got, whether they can't stand Bono or whatever.
Over here, by the way.
Yeah, I know. You always sense that. If there's a way of knocking U2 for whatever, or him or whatever, somebody's going to do it, whether it's tax evasion or whatever. So it's just an unfortunate combination. Perhaps it might have played out a bit differently if it was somebody else. Who knows?
I remember when Bono was Man of the Year, Time Man of the Year. I think it was joint with Bill Gates or something. And in the article, it was going. I can't remember exactly the figures, but it's something like 100 million people are still alive, in large part down to various things that Bono had been involved in. And I was kind of thinking, well, there's no criticism on the man then. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I think you know, the other thing is you're bound in that sort of position, you're bound to be not. And if you look at it from another point of view, you know, it could have been just a Rihanna or one of those sort of deals, and therefore, you know, the publicity and the marketing surrounding that would have been highly sexualized and just sort of would have been also completely inappropriate. So I suppose, you know, in many ways there are, you know, which of those evils, if you're being given a choice, would you kind of prefer to have thrust down your throat? You know, if that's what you feel is happening. You know, I don't personally have a problem with it, but you know, obviously a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Anyway, phew, got that off our chests. Right. Right, so what's next? What, religion, politics? No, let's go. I know what we'll do. Let's go to the future of touch. I don't know whether I can play this because I'll probably get busted. But if I go to the web, this is the Microsoft. The Adobe released a video yesterday or the day before, which is a bunch of creative applications, starting off with audio. I'm probably going to get an ad here. No, here we go. I'll play it a little bit. Starting off with, there's video and some audio mixing, and the notion of, you know, they're putting all their eggs into this kind of, they think the Microsoft Surface, for instance, is going to be the way forward to go to push the envelope for whatever reason. But there's some very intriguing looking examples going on here. And obviously some big bucks going into it. But it just raises an interesting question, if I stop that, as to who might get there first. Because obviously, you know, Apple have had the monopoly for kind of, what, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years with iOS. I mean, we get touch on our phones and Android and what have you. But it's certainly on the desktop, you know, one could argue that Microsoft are way ahead because it's been there for a while. And what do we have? Sonar. I know we've talked about mixing on coffee tables and that kind of thing, but just the idea of integration, where the best route would be for these things to actually have some purpose, because, you know, we've learnt with the iOS scenario, we've had some amazing innovations in how to use a touch interface for, like, gearing parameters and contextualizing menus, and there's a whole lot of really brilliant innovations that have happened on that platform that need to be, I guess, turned into a language of touch if it's ever going to be successful. I know, Robbie, you know, you're very specific about your workflow, your work environment. You know, you've got an iPad involved in your scenario. Do you think there is a future here, or do you think, you know, are we the old guard effectively? You know, kids who don't know any better, are they going to be going, yeah, this is fantastic? I mean, I'm just sort of curious to explore this.
I mean, I've had a long on-off love affair with the idea of touch, right from having I had a Jazz Mutant Lemur back when they came out, and I set up loads of elegant surfaces for it and used it live and all that kind of thing. And and then the iPads and all that, and then, you know, briefly looking at that the Stephen Slate thing recently about possibly, and I don't know, I just find myself, the whole thing is with controllers, I end up buying controllers and I use them for a season, and then I always end up going back to what I always do. I don't have anything like that I've bought that's remained a mainstay in my setup for any amazing period of time. And I don't know if that's just laziness, because you end up having a workflow because of the way you work that's quick, because you just know how to do it, and then anything that comes along which you have to sort of invest and change your way of thinking, kind of, you just think, I haven't got time for that, I'm busy doing work, I've got no time for messing around with this sort of thing. I don't know, but I mean, I do occasionally get seduced back in by something, but it never seems to stick around long enough for me.
Do you think that's mainly because of the language of the touch GUI is just not being, you know, developed strongly enough?
Yeah, maybe. And also there is that whole thing, isn't there? I mean, even if you work on an iPad in the studio, and you go, okay, I've got the app for Logic where I could ride faders. I have got like a Euphonics artist control with faders, which is the only controller pretty much I use now, and I use it a lot for riding individual parts in string. When I score string stuff, I like to do all the string rides individually on a fader, and I can, you know, listen at the speaker, and I've got my finger on a physical fader, and I can feel it moving up and down, and all that's great. Whenever I try and do that with a touch device, I end up looking down at the fader, because I just don't, you know, I don't have that.
You don't know where your finger is, yeah, because it's not
that confidence just to be able to listen. I find it distracting.
Okay.
So I don't know if anyone else feels the same about it.
I know, Gaz, I mean, we started Sonic Touch because we were both sort of heavily enthused, well, you especially were really enthused by the whole notion of the iPad and stuff. I mean, do you see it moving to the desktop? Because, I mean, so far, Microsoft is pretty much the only game in town when it comes to actually integrating, you know, touch into desktop applications, right?
Well, we were testing things yesterday, weren't we, Nick? Me and you, sort of trying some of the, you know.
Yeah, we got a
DAWs.
Surface Pro 3 here.
Yeah.
To see how it would integrate. Limited testing. It wasn't quantitative, I would say, but yeah.
Oh gosh, no, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so it is quite interesting in a way that something that there's plenty that can be learnt from the iOS. You know, the fact that iOS has been around for a while, and that certain idioms have come into being. Like you were talking about the idea that when you touch on something in a touch thing and you drag your finger out, and the amount of
the gearing, yeah, so the ratio and that sort of
the ratio. So, you know, I think that there's plenty to learn from the touch thing. We're seeing some things coming out now, like the Apple phone has got a touch with a pressure, and I think we'll see lots more pressure stuff coming out. And I think that's the key. I think once the pressure element starts to become widely adopted into touch devices, I think, you know, so your finger, if you just run your finger across, you know, it might not do anything, but if you run your finger with pressure, it will drag the, you know.
But do you think perhaps we're just being hoodwinked because essentially manufacturer wants as little moving parts and bits and pieces to anything that they make as possible? If they could just sell us a glass screen with a small computer behind it and then update the software and come up with other things, that's brilliant, because less things to go wrong, less parts to make on the outside. I'm talking, obviously, there's lots of stuff going on the inside, and we're just being kind of almost Emperor's New Clothes a little bit to it. You know, we like the idea of it because it's new and neat, but actually in practice it really doesn't have all that much to offer.
Well, you know, certain things the touch thing is brilliant for, as we've, you know, explored. I mean, it's a really good way of well, like actually yesterday, one of the things I thought was really good, we were using a stylus on the Surface,
yes,
and I was drawing in automation,
yeah.
And the automation I could draw on it was just running Ableton Live on the Surface Pro, and I was drawing automation in, and I was drawing this with this fantastic amount of detail, the automation, and I was thinking, yeah, you see, that was a winner, wasn't it? I mean,
yeah.
that was a really good approach. And, you know, speculated about running a 4-bar loop and having a lot of automation channels opening, and then just drawing in like real-time automation, and thinking,
so changing the workflow to adapt to the technology, I suppose, is kind of what we're talking. I don't know, Rich. I know you have strong feelings about the way that you work, and, you know, the fact that it doesn't, you know, certainly for mixing in the way that you're working, you haven't seen anything yet that kind of will sway you from that. But do you think this is an inevitable inevitably we're going to end up with touch? I know we do keep coming back to this, but it's becoming stronger and stronger with this kind of video from Adobe. If you get the chance to look at it, there's some very impressive looking kind of techniques and ideas in there. I don't know how much of it's all real. They would have to. What would it take for you to go, hey, you know, I could use that. That was definitely something that's going to work for me. I suppose
Well, when I need to be turning a knob, I turn a knob.
Yeah.
And when I need to be pushing a fader, I push a fader. But as far as mixing goes, I've always wanted to mix on a computer screen. Back when I was doing console automation in the early '80s, I wanted the control afforded me by seeing the automation laid over the audio I was actually doing. I always wanted this, and I'm quite happy to have it.
So you're mousing it effectively and creating curves and drawing in.
For the most part, but if I need a filter sweep or something to occur that takes place better on a knob than it does on a mouse, quite happy to grab the knob.
Sure.
Pardon the expression.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, certainly in the off professional side of things, you know, I mean, I know you probably have an iPad and an iPhone, and so that language of interfacing with specific devices, yeah, I see them, is that language of it is becoming second nature in those aspects of what you do. There must be a point where that starts to cross over. Certainly, you know, I found, you know, where certain things I'm going, oh yeah, I can just, oh no, I can't. It's not one of those. You know, you get that kind of confusion. And the compartmentalization of it, do you think that that's important to keep it that way?
Maybe, but maybe not. For some people, like, for example, I tend to work out of my head. So I envision a result, and I think about ways to get that result that might be effective in terms of providing something like what I'm envisioning, which usually isn't half of what it should be. But for other people, they need these things around to create the inspiration to develop the ideas. Right. So to have a bank of knobs that are controlling things ready to go, so you can just start twisting things to see where you go. And I could name a whole bunch of people whose entire performances kind of go that way, but I won't. That's a pretty valid creative way for people to generate possibilities for themselves. So I'm not, you know, dug in about this religiously. It just as it relates to my own work, I think, okay, I need a filter sweep here. How's the best way to get it? Well, grab the filter knob and turn it. You know, that'll work just fine. You know, or I need the modulation to change in such and such a way. Well, grab these 2 or 3 knobs and do this little choreographed dance with them, and great, I get this result. I could draw it in on screen, but it isn't as much fun, and it probably won't be as effective, and it'll take longer.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. It's interesting, though, to see that there's this sort of strong intent from another player, which I think can only be a good thing, as long as we don't end up with this kind of, we think touch should be like this, and it's a completely different set of, you know, language, skills and movements and standards. That's the thing I worry about, that we end up with kind of 2 different kinds of touch interfaces, and you're either a kind of thumb and finger person, or you're a, you know, whatever it may be. You know, there's these.
But again, there's nothing wrong with that. You had the original Moog wheel configuration, where you had your pitch bend and your mod, and then you had Roland's side-to-side thing, and Oberheim had a lever, and ARP tried the proportional pitch controller with buttons, and it's all, you know, on some level, it's all good. I don't mean to be cliche about it, but whatever stimulates your creativity is cool.
Yes, I agree. I think on an OS level, where you're interfacing with applications that work on either platform, there needs to be some standardization of it. And I guess that's going to be down to the developers themselves to write the hooks into, you know, whatever Microsoft offer in Windows 8.1 and 9 and 10 and wherever it's going, so that we're able to do that.
But the standard is achieved through the communication medium, which in our case mostly is MIDI. In other words, that's where the rubber meets the road for all of these things. They have to send out MIDI controllers numbered between 0 and 127 in order to be effective in this world in creating those kinds of controllers for now. When we move past MIDI into some other standard, if we ever do, because it's been for over 30 years, then there will be that. But the joining point is that language which we've all sort of agreed to, which is MIDI, which allows these things to control multiple devices, you know.
Well, that's a fair point. Sorry, Robbie, you were just going to come in.
Isn't there a whole generation of touch coming, where the touch gives you some sort of tactile feedback back?
Oh, some sort of haptic stuff.
Yeah, I've seen a few things that hint at that. I know it may be, you know, a while away, but surely that becomes then the kind of the holy grail of the 2 worlds meeting.
A morphing surface. That's interesting.
Configurable, yeah.
We did see in some time back. I remember we looked at something that would that actually created a 3-dimensional space that kind of 3-dimensional shapes on the touch surface itself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I don't know what happened to that, but I'm guessing it's probably quite complicated. I mean, God knows what they have to make that out of. What kind of stuff is there? But yes, I take your point. I mean, I suppose there are people working on this stuff, but it just hasn't come to.
It's the flexibility of having something that's configurable and instantly changeable in its usage, but could at the same time have some sort of tactile feedback, so that you don't, you know, you get the best of both worlds. Surely, if that technology must be being developed, because it's the kind of missing link, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I would guess so. And that, again, it's sort of almost like emulating moving parts and multiple components, which is kind of what they're moving away from. So it's a sort of interesting full circle emulation of that, maybe.
What about motorized faders?
Yeah, well, yes, same sort of deal, I guess.
I mean, it's sort of the history of that, giving you the device giving you feedback to what you've already done and allowing you to modify that in real time. You know, it's there, and you can do it with joysticks. You can do it with knobs. I mean, I think motorizing things has its own set of problems and noises and things like that. But there is some history to this, and
absolutely.
I am encouraged and excited by the way people are interested in it and in developing it, even though I may not use a lot.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because was it Cubase? So there's a couple of, and I think Sonar as well do it, where there's a point where you just roll, if you leave your mouse pointer over a parameter, a physical MIDI piece of hardware will then adjust that parameter. That seems to me could be quite a good. It's never really been. You know, I'm sure people use it all the time, but it's not it seems like a great standard, because you could have, you know, two or three kinds of things: latching button, a knob, a fader, whatever, something else that you could just have assigning to sort of specific hotspots on a screen that are constantly assignable. I think I've talked about it before, where you could just go that one, and that one, those fingers there. You know, this knob and this knob, and so it always goes, my thumb is going to be the fader, my finger is going to be the knob, and you say, as many points on the screen that you touch, you could then have physical controls there, latching or non-latching, and those are the sort of things that need to perhaps develop, so we can have cross the divide between the screen and what's physically around us on our desks or what have you.
I seem to remember there being something with Braille. I can't remember what it was now, but it was just something that kind of created, you know, almost like a Braille Kindle or something. I can't remember quite what it was, but it would change little bumps. Yeah. And I was thinking, oh, you know, there could be something in that, couldn't it, for adapting some of that technology.
Yeah, definitely. Well, suffice to say, we're not there yet, but I mean, that's quite a major. I mean, that particular video sends a couple of messages, doesn't it? It's one of them is kind of two fingers up to Apple. We're doing our own thing, and we've got the clout, and look where we are. Where are you? And there's also just the statement of intent, and hopefully, you know, that means if they open up the ability to do this, which is what Apple did with iOS, for smaller developers to kind of hook into that sort of stuff without having to kind of jump through 10 million page legal documents and promise their children and the moon on a stick and all that kind of stuff, which you tend to get with large corporate entities. You know, hopefully that we'll start to see that kind of development, and then, you know, then just generally the whole thing will move forward in whatever way allow it to, I suppose, as users. Oh, right. Anyway, I think that's probably it for tonight. It's we're heading towards the end of office hours here in the UK, and I know we're actually all in the UK usually. Obviously, Rich is here too. I guess it's still morning on clockwise time here, so I know you've got the curtains drawn. If you keep them drawn till it gets dark, then when you go out, it'll feel like the end of the day, and I'm sure you'll get back onto clock. You got a sound check tonight, Rich?
No, actually, I have a nice dinner planned tonight with a friend, so quite looking forward to that. And if I didn't draw those shades, it would be so bright back there you wouldn't see me at all.
Actually, what's kind of interesting, what it looks like is that giant monolith from 2001 with this light shining behind it. If I play the Sonic State intro, we'll have that kind of choral vibe, and then if you just get the monkey suit on, Rich, then we've got the show right there. Anyway, Rich, Hilton, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate your time is precious when you travel like this, so very much appreciate you joining us, and I hope you have a great show. I'm only sorry I can't be there with you, but sadly my commitments this week are legion.
That's okay. I'm glad to be here, and thanks for having me.
That's all right. You're always welcome. And back to Robbie Bronneman there in Robot Studios, where no doubt he's got to go back. I'm sure the messages are coming through. You said you delivered that 20 minutes of audio with only 3 adjustments. I'll bet you're looking at your inbox with trepidation when they go, just one thing.
No. It's all good. They've all signed off on it. It's all done.
When's the next batch of work then? Have you got another kind of tranche of things to do?
Yeah, we've got to do the next bit in January.
Oh,
so
right.
It's a bit of time. But no, it was good because they said things like, yeah, just wondering whether that sweep at the end could just the reverb go on a little bit longer. Went, yeah, that's all right. We can do that.
Excellent.
So yeah.
Oh, yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Robbie. A pleasure to have you as ever. And I'm not sure what Gaz is doing there. Gaz seems to be firing up the OP1. He's got his strap on. I'll tell you what I might do then. If you're going to do that, I don't seem to be able to. Mine's not playing. Wow, there he goes.
So
very
yes.
Good. Unfortunately, mine seems to have broken, so I can't play. My MIDI seems to have bonked out, so I can't.
Aww.
I can't play along with you on the Boomstars. People have been asking in the chat room. Yes, Boomstar review will be coming. The reason it hasn't come out yet is because I'm waiting for a replacement for one of them. There was obviously damaged in transit somewhere, so I want to compare the two filters. That's why. Anyway, back to you, Gaz. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you again soon, and thank you for your OP1ism. Oh, look, Rich has got something there on his iPhone as well. I wasn't sure. Look at that. Something else. So I can't do anything. Oh, yeah, look at this. Over here, yep. We got a live jam. There we go. Sort of.
Yeah.
Anyway, folks, thank you very much. That's it for Sonic Talk number 378. Remember, if you want to win a copy of Isotope RX4, I think I have the page here. Don't forget, you need to tweet out hum removal, hashtag hum removal to @SonicNick and @Isotope Inc. And don't forget, watching on YouTube, subscribe for God's sake. Why wouldn't you? Anyway, that's it for this week. See you later.